Hi everyone, I'm teacher Lisa. In today's class, we're going to talk about past habits and states. We all have habits in the past. Some are good, some are bad. Maybe you used to eat too many cheeseburgers, or maybe you finally quit smoking. Let's talk about the words, the grammar, and the language we use to talk about those past habits, whether they're good or bad. So let's jump into today's lesson. So past habits and state. Let's look at the introductory paragraph. I'll read it here. When you talk about habits or states in the past, you can use used to or would. English often uses these forms to contrast the past with the present. So let's look at the example sentence using used to. We used to play tennis every day, but now we prefer golf. So whenever we see used to, it refers to a past habit. And then we have another verb, such as play, but we leave it alone. It's always just to play or whatever the verb is. We don't change it. We don't add an ed or ing to that second verb. Why? Because the used to tells us already that we're in the past. So we don't need to do anything to any other verbs that follow used to. Let's look at another example. We can also use it to talk about fixed states at some indefinite time in the past. So when we don't know exactly when in the past, we just talking in general terms about something in the past, we can also say used to. So look at this nice example. We used to live, remember the live, we don't do anything to that second verb, we leave it alone. We used to live in London before we moved to Sydney. So it's something that happened in the past, but we're not giving an exact time or date. Let's continue. Next example. Did you used to ride a scooter when you were a student? Okay. So notice this is a question. So because it's a question, we're not going to have the D, the used to. We just say used to. Okay, so used becomes use in the question form and also in negative form. So look at our next example. I didn't used to believe in ghosts until I visited a haunted house. So we know we're in the past because the did tells us we're in the past. Did is the past tense of do. So we just need used to. But again, that used to or used to tells us it's a past habit. Another way to use used to with habits, let's look at our next example. Now, you can use would to talk about past habits. It's a little bit more formal. So let's see if we hear that it's more formal. When I was little, we would go for a picnic every Saturday. So it's the same idea of used to, and you could still say used to. It's just a little bit more formal. It's just another way to talk about habits in the past. So you can also say we used to go for a picnic every Saturday. The next example, whenever there was soccer on TV, we just wouldn't do our homework. We just wouldn't do our homework. Again, talking about the past habits. So remember what habits are. It's something that you routinely did, whether it was good or bad. Let's get some practice. First, let's look at a common mistake. You cannot use used to when you're talking about definite time frames in the past, or if you said you did something a certain number of times. Remember, when you use used to, it's just in a general way. So the example, we used to play lots of board games when I was young. So it's correct to use used to here because we don't have a specific time in the past. It's just very general, just when I was young. Look at the next two, which we have some mistakes. We used to play lots of board games yesterday. Because it's very specific, you can't use used to here. Or we used to play board games 20 times. It's too specific, so you can't use used to here. We use it when we are talking about something general in the past. Okay, we just have a time frame in the past but it's not very specific. So let's look at some examples. Here you can pause the video and see if you can get them all correct, and then we'll come back and look at the answers together. Let's first look at our example. Whenever my uncle visited, we have to use would bring, okay, presents for us all. So he would bring presents. So we can simply just use would and bring, just put them together, and it works really well. So go ahead and see if you can do the rest. Okay, so how'd you do? Let's review. Number one, my mother used to walk 5 miles to school and back. So remember, we can put that ed used to, but we don't do anything with that second verb. We leave that alone, walk. Next one, number two, I didn't used to like using the internet, but now I think it's great. So because we have a negative here with the didn't or did not, we just say used to. We leave that alone. We don't add the D to the used, it's used to. And also we don't change that verb like, we leave that alone. Next question, number three, and we know it's a question here at the question mark at the end. So we are in the past, so we're going to say did you used to eat your lunch at school? So again, it's a question. Remember, with questions or negatives, we just say used to, not used to. Number four, my grandmother's house didn't used to have electricity. Again, we have the negative, did not, so we just leave it used to. And the last one, we're going to have to use would, so it's more formal, but you can also use used to, but here we have to use would. Whenever I had a toothache, my dad would take me to a scary dentist. Oh boy, yeah, dentists are scary, even as adults, I think. So how'd you do? Hopefully you got 100%. Let's move on. We're going to rewrite the highlighted correcting the errors. So let's read the entire paragraph here, and then we're going to correct it together. When my grandmother tells me about how things did used to be, I realize how lucky I was as a child. I used to complain about having to walk to school in the rain, whereas she would to walk 5 miles to school in all types of weather, including snow. I used to got upset when a teacher told me off in class. I had usually done something really bad, but my grandmother didn't used to do anything bad. She used to wrote with her left hand, but back then teachers will be punish you just for that. So perhaps you might have heard some of the mistakes when I read it. And it is good at an intermediate to advanced level, you should be hearing mistakes and using your ear. If you are a beginner, you can't really use your ear because everything sounds good. So hopefully you heard some of the mistakes. So the first one is corrected for us. Did used to. No, we just say used to. We don't need the did in this example. It's just used to be. We don't need the did because the used to tells us it's something already in the past. So please pause the video and see if you can make the corrections, and we'll go over the answers together in a moment. Okay, let's see how you did. Number one, so we have to say used to complain. We can't leave it used to. It's used to when you just have I used to, and we leave that second verb alone. Okay. Number two, would walk. We don't need the to. When we use would, we just say would walk. Number three, used to get upset. Okay. The problem is with the got. Here they have got. Remember, the used to tells us we're in the past, so we can't do anything to the verb. We don't change it. We just leave it in its infinitive form. We don't agree. We don't do anything with it. Just to get used to get upset. Didn't used to do. When we have a negative, we can't say used to. We say used to. And the third one, used to write. The same thing with the write. Here in the mistake, it says wrote, but we don't change that second verb. Used to tells us we're in the past. We don't need to change the second verb to a past tense. And then we say would, not will. We always say would. When we talk about past habits, we don't say will. So we simply have would. So hopefully you did great. See you in the next video. We're going to talk about comparing and contrasting. Thanks. This is Teacher Lisa.